Chapter 8 is the last of the building block chapters. 1 through 8 have been kind of laying the groundwork for the chapters to come, because once we get into chapter 9 already, we're going to put everything into practice. We're going to see what actually happens. But again, so chapter 8 now is going to wrap up specifically 6, 7, 8, the part about the animal soul, the nefesh bahamas. Part of that is talking about klipa and sitracha, things that are from the other side, and what happens with all of it. You'll see, especially once this chapter is done, how we were building up to this point. Because once we start talking about the animal soul, we have to define what it meant, especially using a term like animal. No, we're not talking about something that's specifically evil. We're talking about something that has a propensity for the physical material world. Well, what about the times that we do indulge in the physical material world? What does that look like? What is the outcome of that? That's kind of what we've been doing till now. And now we have this chapter which tells us that if we engage in something that's forbidden, asur, as we learned last time, means that it's bound up. It means that the holiness, the spark of God that's within the object cannot be elevated because it's tied down by klipa sitracha by the other side. Something that's permitted and that's mutter can be elevated because it's unbound, it's untied. It's in there, and then when we use it for the right reasons, we elevate it. So now we start off. Here the example is used for forbidden foods. If someone eats forbidden food, even if they eat it, l'shem shamayim, I need to eat lobster right now because lobster is so delicious and I can use that energy for godly purposes, it cannot be elevated. You can't take something that's bound up and say, no, I'm going to use it for godly purposes, and now you elevate it. We're using it here specifically, we're talking about food, but it could be anything. Anything that is forbidden. You can't say, I'm going to do something forbidden toward a holy end. Part of why it's forbidden is because it cannot be used for a holy end. It's not just like, this little technicality. Is that, no, it doesn't work like this. The general idea of where does something forbidden come from, Tanya specifically, the Alter Rebbe calls it, it's a Yetzer Hara b'koach ha'masavla d'var masurim. The Yetzer Hara and the desires, the craving, the power, this underlying desire, craving for things that are forbidden, he calls it a shade mishadin nuchrain. It's a foreign shade. It's a foreign demon inside the Jewish person. Which means that the Alter Rebbe is saying that it's not the natural state of a Jewish person to want to sin, which is very important. It's a very significant detail. That goes all the way back to one of the first chapters we spoke about, how you had the traveling preachers who would just go and yell at everybody for being a bunch of sinners and they're all going to burn in hell. The Alter Rebbe is saying, no, it is not the natural state of a Jewish person to sin. So obviously the question is, how does someone come to sin? Wait. Okay, we're going to get there. The Yetzer Hara, v'koach ha'masabel d'dvarim ha'mutar, l'mlos tavoso. We have a Yetzer Hara and a power of desire, the craving for things that are permitted in order to fulfill a desire. What's forbidden is forbidden, what's permitted is unnecessary. As in, are we using this now to indulge? And we use this word very specifically. Am I fulfilling a craving, a desire? Is this an indulgence? Is this an I want or this is what I should do? There's a difference. I want and this is what I should do are two very different things, even though they're both legal. But as far as the godly mission is concerned, and go back to the NASA example, an astronaut on the spaceship is concerned, I want is not a holy pursuit, and it does not fulfill the mission. This is what I'm supposed to do is a holy pursuit that does fulfill the mission. What is that the Alter Rebbe refers to that? It's called the shade mishen yudun. So this is called a Jewish demon. This is a shade. As in, this is the more of the natural state of the Jewish person. It is more natural for us to have inclinations and desires for things that may be permitted, but it's more about a taiva. It's chasing after permitted things kind of for the wrong reason. Chase after for the wrong reason, that's not a good thing, and eventually that action we'd have to have teshuva, and we'd have to elevate that action somehow. So what does it have to do with anything? The case that the Alter Rebbe is setting out right now is, again, it's not the natural state of a Jewish person to sin, so how does a Jewish person come to sin? We know people transgress. This is part of what we battle, because we're human beings, so this is part of what we battle. So how does a person come to transgress? Because the Yetzer Hara and the koach ha'masavla d'var mutarim, right, the shade mishen yudun, what it does is that it persuades a person to toe the line. Persuades a person to nudge the line. Until eventually, they can get them to a point where they'll cross the line entirely. This is part of why, think about something like muktzah, where it doesn't say anywhere in the Torah, thou shalt not touch a pen for the 39 malachos. We know not to write and not to erase. But it doesn't say anywhere you're not allowed to touch a pen. It came to a point where the rabbis had to institute the idea of muktzah because they saw that Shabbos was not being properly observed. So there are safeguards that had to be put into place. We could think of it in our own lives, certain standards that we had for ourselves, or certain standards that we kind of kept to, and then you might be able to see that over a certain amount of time, either if those standards were strengthened or if those standards became weaker. So if the standards become strengthened, great, you're going on a good path and you're growing and etc. But there are times that the standards become weaker, either we stop caring or you're not anymore in the environment where you're kind of compelled to do those things. That's especially right. You see a lot of people will change once they're out of school or once they're out of seminary or as they're getting older. Either if they have a family, they don't have a family, whatever it is, over the years, people will change. For good or for not good. Fact, people change. Now, people changing in an area where the standards are lessening, it's because they're coming to a point where I only ever kept this because living at home, my mom would have been so upset if I didn't keep it, so that's why I kept it. And now that I left, I realized I don't care about it anymore, so I'm not going to keep it anymore. Whatever that is. It's not that they woke up one day and was like, I'm not going to keep this part of Judaism anymore, or anything like that. There's a process that has to occur. We're calling it here the shading you've done, this Jewish demon that's more natural to a Jewish person. Another way to think about it, there's a gradual rationalization that allows a person who was on one side of a line, they toe the line until they cross the line. We just did this chapter with the high schoolers, and I look at them and that's why when everyone started wearing black leggings, their skirts got shorter. Every girl knows that the taboo is you don't talk to girls about sneas. As soon as you say the sneas word, everybody turns their brains off. They don't want to hear the lecture. They're not interested. If you would actually look, I think you could actually make the case that when black leggings became more popular or something for people to wear, certain people, I'm not going to say, oh, if you wear black leggings, you're not going to eat sneas. Okay, come on. But a lot of people wearing black leggings, they started toeing with the line of the hems. They kind of fluctuate a little bit because, oh, my legs are covered anyways. You can't see my legs. So it's okay if the skirt's a little bit shorter. It's the gradual rationalization of things. That again, it's not just a person waking up and deciding I'm going to sin. It's, well, we could do this. Oh, we could do this. This is allowed. It's not forbidden. This isn't forbidden. Oh, is it forbidden until eventually a person can end up crossing a line? Whatever that line's going to be for someone. Even though this may occur, and even though this does occur, this is the process that occurs. I've heard it from a few people now, but the first time I heard it was Chassidus talking about when you rationalize something, you're telling yourself rational lies. Okay, we'll sidetrack for a second. I just learned the Sikha where it talks about, I don't remember the exactness of it, but it goes back to which animals are kosher and then shrutzim you have there. And then there's this thing about the Rambam uses certain language to describe this mitzvah versus that mitzvah. And part of what it is, there's a difference between saying I don't eat shrutzim because they're yucky, because they are yucky. I keep this kosher law. Bugs are yucky. Versus saying I don't keep bugs because the Torah said don't eat bugs. That's why I don't eat bugs. Because when you think about it, and we all know this for ourselves, if we've ever said certain sort of standards or goals for ourselves, we can rationalize out of almost anything. And as soon as you start down that path, people go, oh, slippery slope, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't mean that tomorrow someone's going to become this massive sinner. But it does mean that the second you start to rationalize and you're not holding on to something because God said so, and it's like, well, I keep this because it makes sense to me. Oh, I keep this because da-da-da, whatever. You could come to a point of rationalizing out of it. The justifications, they'll make sense. Rational lies that you tell yourself. Or that goes back to last week when I was talking about the woman that I was talking with. And I said, all the things that you're saying are correct, but you still came to the wrong conclusion. Because all the rational lies, everything she said was totally rational. But someone's being irrational, it's much easier to just be like, you're being a fool. But someone can be totally rational, and everything they say makes sense, but it's still the wrong conclusion. Because the conclusion doesn't align with what the Torah asks of us. It all comes back to avoiding that is I'm keeping this because God said so versus I'm keeping this because it makes so much sense to me. The starting point is supposed to be I keep this because God said so, and now let's see if I could actually try to understand it, why God would say so. If we could have that kind of firmness, determination, anchor, tether, I don't know, that's usually a better protection in making sure that we uphold the standards that we've set for ourselves, the standard that we want to follow in our Judaism. The Alter Rebbe talks about that even if we give into taiva, okay, we're eating a bunch of cake, and okay, oh, now I'm going to use it now for Torah study. Right? We mentioned that back in chapter 6. I'm going to use it now for Torah study. Or I ate a bunch of cake to indulge myself, and then I realized I messed up, so now I want to do teshuvah and rectify for that. So we could do teshuvah for things, could kind of come back from it, but according to how we used it, there is a remnant, there is like a stain that remains. We did mention this last time. That's where you have certain punishments. Well, not punishments, certain consequences like chibud kever and things like that because we have to cleanse ourselves from it. We don't use Gehenna as a warning of punishment. It's a cleansing process that has to occur. Even here, for example, because we did something and we did it for the wrong reasons, it kind of got demoted. And then when we could do teshuvah, if we could elevate that something and we bring it out of sitra achra, but there's an after effect of it. Got a little tainted when it was down there. So in order to clean that up, that's where certain consequences come into place. The Tanya brings the example of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, obviously a great leader, and redacted the Mishnah. And Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was very, very wealthy. Fruits out of their season could be found on his table. In winter, he could have summer fruits, and in the summertime, he had winter fruits because he was that wealthy. He was able to bring them in. He was friends with the ruling Romans of the day and all that sort of stuff. He testified before death that he didn't gain any pleasure from this world, not even enough to fill up his little finger. All the wealth that he had, it was a means to an end. It was not something for his own self. All this wealth, I'm going to use it to make a good impression for the good of the Jewish people. I'm going to use it for the benefit of the godly service and godly purpose. None of it is for me. Even someone who had such opulence and so much wealth. This chapter now goes to talk about Devar B'Telem. meaningless talk or gossip and slander. And it kind of differentiates that someone who's like an Amma arts versus like a scholar. For a scholar to indulge or to engage in Devarim B'Telem is worse than someone who's an Amma arts and he doesn't know any better, so it's not as bad for him. Still shouldn't do it. It's not considered like the same level of engaging in that kind of stuff. And then also like the cleansing. This is Kafakela that it talks about. Kafakela is a punishment where it's called like the hollow of a sling, where it flings the neshama back and forth of like, this is what you could have amounted to, and this is what you did amount to, or something. Very painful for the neshama. So things that are like Devarim B'Telem, that's just meaningless talk, shooting the breeze as they'd call it. This is something that we could kind of come back from, but it also depends. A scholar or a learned person versus something that's actually forbidden. It's not just Kavakel that's going to clean up for that. And we're leading to something here. It talks like Gehenim Shel Shalag, sins of omission. If I transgress because of like laziness or stuff like that, so that's called like a sin of omission. There's a Gehenim Shel Shalag for that. So it's a Gehenim of snow because omission is coldness, right? The fact that I didn't do something is because there's no caring involved in that. Versus there's like sins of commission, which is like sins, a transgression that comes out of passion or something like that. There's the Gehenim of fire that cleanses for that. So there's like counterparts for everything. But the point is, once you've transgressed and you've engaged in a certain thing, there's a cleansing process that's equal to it that goes. So also, like why we're talking about Devarim B'Telem, because we're supposed to be engaged all day in Torah studies. So if we're not, there's a process that has to occur to rectify what we've done. Where's this all leading to? It talks about how there's kind of like a difference, Devarim B'Telem, and then engaging in, I guess you could say, secular knowledge. We'll use secular knowledge as like a general broad category of everything that's just not specific Torah study. It's an important thing that's brought here because all the things that we're saying, like, oh, so we don't want to engage in anything that's this, that, or whatever, and like things that are not of Kedusha, so anything that's the neutral zone then, am I allowed to learn how to become an engineer? Am I allowed to learn how to do all this kind of stuff? What is our engagement with the world considering all the things that we've said? Which is why all this stuff is kind of important to now look at. The Alter Rebbe is making a distinction between things that engage the intellect and things that engage the six midas, the emotions. Scoffing or idle talk, boasting for vol, like Devarim B'Telem, these are things that don't engage the midas. So it's not as bad as something that engages the intellect. Because the midos, right, remember the 10 soul powers and we have the 3 cognitive, 7 emotive? The emotive ones, that's a lower level than the intellect. It's supposed to be mind over matter kind of thing. So the midos are on a lower level than the intellect. Devarim B'Telem, anybody can engage in that. You don't need a brain to just indulge, to just be talking about meaningless things. And we see that because you could be an Amar, you could be a Chacham who does Devarim B'Telem. Versus someone who's engaged in, let's say, secular knowledge, that's something you're actually engaging your intellect in. Well, you need to use your intellect for it. You have to have intellectual capacity for that. Not any random person can steep themselves in this kind of knowledge. Well, if we're engaging the intellect, that's a step up. It's even worse than just engaging the emotions, because the emotions are a step down from intellect. So what do we do? What are we supposed to do? Are we or are we not supposed to be engaging in secular knowledge? It's a broader thing that, especially you can see in the Chabad world, that we're much more into engaging in the world that we live in. So how does that work? If all these things that we're talking about, and we have all the Gehennims, and we have all the other punishments that come about, or we have all the things about how if you're indulging, you still have to do teshuva if you indulge in something, even though it was permitted. So what do we do about all this? This is the life that we're living. We have to have jobs, we have to work, and not all of us are sitting all day just learning and studying. And what about if we can use all these other things? What, so a Jewish person not allowed to become a mechanic? So how does that work? It also mentions here, just as a side thing, that the secular sciences or the secular studies, it says that they fell out and Shviras HaKelim happened. So Shviras HaKelim was something that occurred when you have a lot of light and you have very little vessels to hold it. So, and then all the sparks of God just scattered all along the world. That's part of the origin story of creation, Shviras HaKelim, that God had this great light and he wanted to come into the world, and the world couldn't handle it, so Shviras HaKelim. And then all the godly sparks scatter all over the world, and our mission now is to redeem those godly sparks. The secular sciences, the secular knowledge base, is part of the fallout of the Shviras HaKelim, the breaking of the vessels. It's a whole other thing, but it mentions it here, so that's why we're mentioning it. So what do we do about all this? So we have the Chachmas Umas Ha'olam, secular knowledge base. The Alter Rebbe tells us that there's 2 ways to engage in the secular knowledge base. One is Kedei Parnes Mehen, Berevach Lavod Hashem. If we're using it for Parnasa, if it's a means to an end, I gotta provide for a family. If it's tzedakah, we're gonna build beautiful buildings or whatever it is, then yeah, you can engage in this kind of stuff. Remember, it's the mindset. I'm not just having a job because I have to have a job. Becoming a mechanic because I love mechanics makes it easier to go to work. It means that I can actually excel in my job because I can have some sort of interest in it. But that's not an end unto itself. The ultimate purpose of becoming the mechanic is because I have to have parnasa to feed the family. A woman who once wrote to the Rebbe that because of financial reasons, she was going to become a typist to help provide for the family. And the Rebbe said, you can work as a typist, but you don't have to become a typist. There's a big difference there. So that's one thing. And then the other thing that we have is another way of engaging with secular knowledge is that we're going to use it in our service of God and understanding His Torah. Prime examples that the author brings down are the Ramban and Ramban. Maimonides and Nachmanides. We know the Rambam was a great prominent physician. They were both prominent scientists. We know the Rebbe was an engineer. But these were not ends unto themselves. These are both used to accomplish and to help and to facilitate in their service of God and in studying God's Torah and understanding God's Torah. They actually have, if any of you have seen the book, they have a book of the early years of the Rebbe. It was very meticulously done. It's so detailed. Like, on this day, the Rebbe went from here to here. That's the entire entry of the day. That's how meticulous they were about it. So it talks about people who remember the Rebbe as a child. His room was covered in all these charts of astronomy. The Alter Rebbe came up with a calendar when he was, 12 or something? The Alter Rebbe was advanced geometry at 10. Came up with a 4-year calendar at the age of 12 or some crazy things like that. But the Rebbe had all these astronomy charts. And they say one day the Rebbe came and he predicted that listen to this, there's going to be an eclipse. The Rebbe was also, I don't know, maybe 13, 14 at the time. The friend group, they were all waiting, and there was an eclipse then. And the Rebbe was kind of just like, I thought I had figured out the eclipse. And then they got a newspaper from somewhere that had like a little article in it about how in this location, there was an eclipse that day. The person who recounted this, and the Rebbe was kind of pleased. They're like, my calculations did work. But it's not just that the Rebbe is just engaging in astronomy because the star charts look good. There's so much in Judaism that's highly dependent on time and seasons and all that sort of stuff. So this would all be a means unto an end. All these things, it comes back to our mindset, and it comes back to remembering what we're doing here. What am I doing here? Why am I doing this? It can become a very exhausting question if you do that about everything you're doing. Like, why am I standing here? Why am I walking here? Why am I in this room? Why am I in this room? We spend so much time on things, on just everything that's not part of the mission. And we spend so much time on things that it doesn't further the cause. We spend so much time on things that are transient. After 120 years, the body's eventually going to go. All the physical stuff that we've worked so hard for, that eventually fades. But the soul is eternal. So all of this that we're coming down to, we do live in the real world. And we do engage with the real world. We're not going to live a life as a parish that we're going to separate ourselves and we're just going to be hermits in our caves. We don't live like that. We do believe in working. And if it's a permitted lifestyle, if it's a permitted job, go for it and excel at it. Great. But it's a means unto an end. It's not an end unto itself. It's a very big difference in our entire approach. If you're on Shar B'tachon, it's really hardcore. It's like very hardcore. Your job is just the vessel and God provides. So stop putting so much into your job because you just have it there as a tool. Like, stop pretending that the job is meaningful. I'm exaggerating. It's very straightforward in the language. And this was written in the 1400s, I think it was written in Spain. See, that's what it is. That's a Sephardi mindset. I finally got a Sephardi mindset of don't give me any nonsense. Your job is just because God said you have to have a job. God is the one who provides. Anyways, but I'll just end off actually with something that I think connects to this. We actually had it. I think it goes back to Parshas Mishpatim. So there's a sicha that the Rebbe talks about. I think it's Parshas Mishpatim. It speaks about 4 different kinds of watchmen. Unpaid watchmen, someone who's a borrower, someone who's a renter, and someone who's the paid watchman. The Rebbe relates this to there's 4 kind of people that live in the world. You have some people who live in the world and they are borrowers. They think that they're just here for themselves. I'm in the world, I'm just going to get as much out of it as I can. That's one kind of watchman. You have the watchman who's like a renter, who he's taking as a benefit to himself, but okay, I took, so I'll give back also. Okay, I got to pay for the things I got. Okay, so I'll do a couple mitzvahs to just pay for, because God gave me these things. Paid watchman, who kind of believes in the greater picture, got to do what God wants and what we got to do, but at the same time, it's also because there's a promise of reward sometime in the future. That's kind of still a motivating factor for him. And then you have an unpaid watchman, who's not there for themselves at all. The unpaid watchman is here. God put him here, and he's going to watch over what he's been given, soul, the body that has been given. I'm going to watch over it for the benefit of the person who lent it to me. There's no personal consideration. I'm doing this for you. That's the unpaid watchman. Obviously, we can see what kind of people those are. We can see for ourselves which times we fall into which category of watchman according to some of our behaviors. The ideal is to become the unpaid watchman. That I'm here with purpose and with reason, and all these things that I'm engaging in, I want to try to make sure that they're all for the fulfillment of the purpose and the reason. There's so often that we kind of separate either our Judaism or our fulfillment of Judaism, and not in a way that it suffers, but things that I do because I'm Jewish and I love Judaism and I love being Jewish and I do all these things. And then there's also all of my things. There's 2 programs that are running parallel to each other. They're the things that I love to do, and because they're not forbidden, I get to do them. And then there's also things that God asks me to do. Especially what this chapter is showing us is that we're supposed to combine them. They're supposed to be the same, not 2 separate tracks that we're running along. Our entire track is supposed to be the track of, why am I doing this right now? It's to finish the sentence. Why am I doing this right now? Can I say that this is going to serve the mission? Can I say that through doing this, an ultimate purpose for this? There's a godly Judaism purpose for it. And if I can't say that, then all I'm doing is engaging the intellect. I'm just indulging. It's kind of like I'm just indulging the intellect then. That's the Shebishen Yehudun. That's the Jewish demon that's coming at us. To say, this is permitted, so it's okay if you just spend a lot of time on this. But what's the benefit? What's the outcome of it? It doesn't matter. You're not doing anything that's forbidden. It's okay. So if you do that, you're going to become a sinner tomorrow. That's not what it means. It just means we're not furthering the purpose and we're not strengthening ourselves in the fulfillment of the purpose. That's how it goes. So we want to keep ourselves in track and try to keep ourselves from indulging or from needing to ever have to go through any of this certain kind of cleansing process. If we want to make sure that we're doing everything for the right reason, is this the right thing for me to be doing? Well, why am I doing this? Why am I becoming the engineer? Why am I becoming, whatever? Why am I doing all these things? They're not an end unto themselves. They are a means to an end. I have to make sure that they serve a higher purpose. That way I know that I'm on the right track, and I know that the things that I'm doing are then good and godly things. Again, this is what I was put here for. Even though a lot of us want to deny that because it's a great responsibility, when you look at the original Pinocchio, that's not the Disney version. As far as I remember, Pinocchio squishes Jiminy Cricket. You try to be my conscience? Quiet! Because we don't want a conscience. It's annoying. And it means that we have to actually step up, and nobody wants to do that. Again, I'm not doing anything forbidden. Who cares? In our self-refinement, in our self-journey, in our strengthening, in our realization of who we really are, we have to make sure that we're on the right track for things. I might have a propensity towards certain things, permitted things, I'm really good at whatever, or I really like whatever, so great. That could mean that this is your life mission is taking you in this direction. But again, it's not an end unto itself. It's part of the journey that there's an ultimate goal toward it, and that's the fulfillment of the mission. So take the things that you're good at, own the things that you're good at, but make sure that part of the owning it and the using it is using it for a godly purpose. And saying, I'm going to use this now because God gave me these talents, etc., etc., and I'm going to use it now for godly purposes. And that's chapter 8. Questions? We do get to that. I'll give you a short answer. Mashaloshma Balashma is specifically talking about doing Torah mitzvahs. Because at the end of the day, Tanya returns this over and over again, is action matters the most. We have to get it done. The Bavitchers and the Bachrim, they go out on the street corners and they say, hey, do you want to put on tefillin? They're like, would you like to engage in a philosophical discussion about the importance of putting on tefillin? And then afterwards you can put on tefillin. They don't do that. They're like, put on tefillin. Oh, are you interested? Come, we can teach you more. It's the Nasa Vinishma. You got to do and then try to figure it out. So Mashaloshma Balashma is because action is so important. Getting it done is the whole purpose of this world of getting the mitzvah done. So we'd rather get that, make sure the mitzvah gets done first, and then later on try to figure out what our intentions of it are. Right, later on, try to work on the intentions, I should say. Later on, try to refine and develop and elevate those intentions. So we are doing the right thing, not that we're engaging in something permitted for the wrong reasons, that we're doing the right thing for the wrong reason. Well, you'll see, it's going to come up in the chapters. But the Alter Rebbe tells us, make sure you get it done. You can work on what your reasonings are, because we have to get the mitzvahs done. That's why we're here. This chapter is more about, goes back to, why does Tanya care if I indulge? Who cares? If I crave chocolate, I eat chocolate. Who cares? There's no thou shalt not eat chocolate. Or especially because it's permitted. Because Tanya wants us to elevate ourselves as people and refine ourselves as people and get ourselves to a point where Kikar Velecha, going back all the way back to Kikar Velecha, this is the road we take for that. By reminding ourselves that everything we're doing, it's not for ourselves. Just because it's permitted, we don't just do stuff. Again, you're not transgressing by that, but there's two parts to it. One is we're not just doing it, we want to make sure we're doing things for the right reason. And also, if we become negligent in just continuing indulging ourselves, we could come to a point of transgression. Every time we indulge, we feed the animal soul. Make it stronger. You're skipping leg day at the gym each time. That's what it all comes to. Now, hedonism is like the way the Greeks lived. When we talk about the story of the Greeks, we're just going to maximize the life that we're living in the sense of worldly pleasure. That's what hedonism is. I'm just going to feed myself. I'm in this world. I want to enjoy it. Tanya's like, that must suffer. There's no thou must suffer. It's not like that. The point is the indulgent part. So hedonism is considered not good because of the indulgent part. And that's water because water just gives. Water just flows. It's indiscriminate. The only way that water doesn't just flow is if there's some sort of dam or a riverbank that's keeping it in place. Otherwise, think of a flood. Water's just everywhere. So that's why water is compared to indulgence and pleasure. When we originally introduced the chart with 4 elements, it's talking about how negative character traits are rooted in the 4 elements. We can see how they kind of relate to these elements, and that's rooted in the animal soul. This is talking about how someone wants to just indulge. So it's indulgence without any parameters. In a holy sense, water is like chesed. It wouldn't be hedonism, it would be chesed that just gives. Pure chesed just wants to give. There's no barriers to chesed. Gevura is what's like, hey, hang on for a second. We can't just give. Well, that's the extreme example. Just because the kid's like, I want to play with shiny knife. Chesed would be like, let the kid have whatever makes it happy. And Gevura is like, no, we don't just give the kid. Take away the knife. That's where Gevura reigns in chesed. It's like love. Love wants to just give, especially pure love. I'm just going to give. So people end up spoiled because they love you so much, I'm just going to give.